Salam alaikum. I've been asked to comment on the question about knowledge and decolonization of knowledge in universities. Let me first say that universities are not a neutral space. Universities have been constructed through an epistemology that has been Western-centric. And when you look at universities at large, they're not just universities, they're Westernized universities. What I mean by that is that it's a global structure of power. And in many places where there have been revolutions, like in Venezuela or Iran, usually what happens is that these Westernized universities have been inherited as structures of knowledge that in many ways goes against the revolutionary transformations that are required and that are proposed by the new revolutionary government. Usually what happens is that universities become strongholds of reactionary forces, conservative forces that do not help in the revolutionary process. One of the problems has to do with epistemology, the worldview. If you look at universities today, they're not only Westernized universities, they're Westernized universities because the canon of thought is based on Western male of 5 countries. If you look at all the disciplines, we are reading a French man, a German man, a British man, an American man, or an Italian man. The rest are very secondary in terms of Western males, but non-Western people are not there in the canon of thought. It's not as if non-Western people haven't thought about the problems that all these disciplines represent. It's that they're being excluded, they're being inferiorized through epistemic racism. And also, if you look carefully, it's not just that it's racist, the epistemology of the Westernized university, because it privileged white males of 5 countries, but it's also sexist because women are completely excluded from the canon of thought in all the disciplines, including women of the 5 Western countries I mentioned. So this is a racist, sexist epistemology that privileged white men over other people around the world, as if white men were the only one that were capable of thinking and producing knowledge. Now, the question is how and when this happened. I don't have the time to develop the argument here. I have many videos on this question, but there is a world historical answer to this. It's not because they are superior genetically or because white man is superior culturally. It has to do with a long process of what I call 4 genocide epistemicides in the long 16th century. In the conquest of Al-Andalus, in the conquest of the Americas against indigenous people, in the conquest of Africa, and in the conquest of women in Europe burned alive, accused of being witches. This happened between 1450 and 1650. These 200 years were constitutive of the modern world because it was the moment of the European colonial expansion that began in 1492. And as you know, everywhere they went, they destroyed the civilizations they encountered, and they imposed their own civilization. The Christendom at the beginning civilization, and then what is called the capitalist modern civilization, that is a secularization of Christendom, of a theology of domination such as Christendom. That is not the same thing as Christianity. I want to make that distinction. Christendom is a form of theology of domination that is embedded in the state structures of medieval Europe and later were expanded in the European colonial expansion to the rest of the world. Now, with the modern transformation, that is the civilization of modernity as a civilization of death, what they did was to secularize the narrative of Christianity. And then with these 4 genocide epistemicides, in the conquest of Al-Andalus, conquest of the Americas, conquest of Africa, conquest of women buried alive accused of being witches, what they did there was to basically destroy the not only people in genocidal processes, but also destroy their knowledge structures by destroying their civilizations. And so in the early period of modernity, Europeans got sciences from other civilizations. They practiced what I call epistemic extractivism. They took knowledge from many civilizations, especially from Islamic civilization that was at the borders of Europe at the time. And that's how they did science, because up till that time, they were under an obscurantist mode that they were literally burning alive scientists. So the structures of knowledge of the Westernized universities were constituted through these four genocide epistemicides of the long 16th century that put forward structures of knowledge that were racist and sexist from the beginning of the modern period. And later, when the authority of knowledge passed from Christendom theology to pseudosciences in the 19th century, then the authority of knowledge passed to the new religion that I will call the modern sciences. That basically what they did was to secularize many of the narrative of Christendom. And in doing that, they went from Christianize or I'll kill you in the 16th century in the European colonial expansion to civilize or I'll kill you in the 19th century, wiping out millions of people under these slogans. When the authority of knowledge passed from theology to science, then in the 19th century, it turned Christianize or I'll kill you into civilize or I'll kill you. They wipe out millions and millions of indigenous people around the world under the name of civilization and progress in the 19th century. Then in the 20th century, it was developed or I'll kill you. And now in the 21st century is democratize or I'll kill you. All of these are imperialist global projects of domination disguised under some kind of humanitarian salvation discourse of coloniality, where they claim that they're coming to save the world and to bring some kind of noble project, when in fact what they're really doing is plundering, super exploiting the world and killing millions of people in the name of Christendom or in the name of civilization, development, or democracy. So these are things we need to pay attention carefully. And we need to have a project of decolonizing the epistemology of the university, because if we don't do that in countries that are going through a revolutionary process, anti-imperialist process, then what is going to happen is that you're going to educate the students and the people who pass through the university with the wrong epistemology. What I mean by that is we cannot do anti-imperialist projects with right-wing epistemology. We cannot do Islamic revolutionary projects with Christendom Western-centric epistemology. These things don't go together. These things are in contradiction. And when this happens, you're going to then, in the universities, with the best intentions in the world, if you don't decolonize the university, you're going to just create or produce intellectuals and elites that are going to be colonized in the mind and will be working once they graduate and they go to the labor market or they go to positions of administration in the state. They're not going to have to be there working for the transformation that the country needs. They're going to be a counter-revolutionary force because they've been trained and they've been socialized and they've been, in a sense, indoctrinated with right-wing epistemology, with Western-centric, Eurocentric knowledge. And so the question of decolonization of knowledge is a strategic in any anti-imperialist revolutionary transformation. And in a sense, the problem, in a sense, in an Islamic revolution, you have all this all the possibilities to have both spirituality and science together. You don't need to dissociate this like in the modern Western civilization, that they link science from spirituality, and because they see this in a dualistic mode. That is, they believe that religion is the opium of the masses, or is the religion is something that they see it as obscurantism, because in local European history that was the case. Christendom was obscurantist to science, but that's not the case in the rest of the world. The rest of the world did not have a dualistic concept. They have holistic concepts in the relationship between humans and other forms of life, and therefore there was no problem in having science and spirituality together. In Christendom, there was this problem because they thought that nature was evil, and any scientist doing experiment with nature was accused of playing with evil forces, and therefore accused of, of playing with Satan, with evilness, etc. They would be burned alive. In Islamic civilization, other civilization, like indigenous civilization in the Americas, like in African civilization, Chinese civilization, other civilizations, sciences were flourishing, technology was flourishing, because they didn't see nature as something dualistically opposed to humans. They saw nature as part of the creation. So if you discover something in nature that we didn't know about, you as a scientist, you were celebrated. You were not burned alive. So this means that with the concept of Tawhid, that is a concept of unity with diversity, the concept of Pachamama in indigenous people in the Americas, the concept of other concepts of the global South, like Ubuntu in Africa. These concepts were always have the concept of diversity within unity, unity with heterogeneity. It's a non-dualistic concept, it's a holistic concept, like Tawhid. And therefore, you have there all the possibilities of having science and having spirituality. Now, part of the problem with modern science, and that's we need to decolonize from that, is that modern science, because it saw nature as something dualistically opposed to the human experience, they were, in a sense, they had a serious problem, because, and that's part of the problem we're living today, is that the science do not have the rationality or reproduction of life. A modern science see nature as an instrument and something disposable, and therefore is being at the center of the destruction of the life in planet Earth, of the ecology of the planet, because it has this dualistic concept that comes from Christendom, but was secularized through Cartesianism. René Descartes, the famous founder of modern European philosophy, that thought that nature was something to exploit, control, savage, etc., and did not, and therefore has an antagonistic relationship with nature to such a point that he developed this dualistic ontological concept where humans are here, nature is over there, and therefore in his rationality there was no, it was dualistic, not holistic, and therefore every technology developed through this rationality had there the seeds of the destruction of life. So if you think that nature is dualistically separated from human life, you can develop technology that destroys nature around you, and it doesn't matter, because you are, human life should continue. And that's a fallacy. As we know today, we've been 400 years in global capitalism and imperialist structures of knowledge and of domination exploitation under the cosmology of Cartesianism. And that has there the seeds and the rationality of destruction of life. Holistic cosmologies are different because they understand that the relation between humans and other forms of life is holistic. That is, we all coexist within one cosmos, and if you destroy anything around you, you destroy yourself. So it's a simple idea, but it's very important and crucial to the world we live today. So we need to decolonize ourselves from this Western-centric, Eurocentric knowledges to be able to have a future for humanity. If we don't decolonize from these concepts, we're just going to be doing science without the rationality of reproduction of life. It's a sign of death. It's a sign that is destructing life in planet Earth. So we need to have there in everything we do, in the technology we produce, in the scientific knowledge we produce, the concept of diversity within unity, Tawhid, to understand that we need to have some kind of balance and equilibrium between human life and other forms of life. And if we do not have this balance and we create a science that do not have or technology that do not have the rationality of reproduction of life, we're just going to destroy life. And this is what's been going on now for 400 years, to the point that now we are in a major ecological crisis at a world scale. This is just an example of many things. If we go to the social sciences or humanities, we also need to decolonize there from concepts of Western-centric authors that have thought the social historical problems of their own countries in the West, but they never thought the problems of the global South. And therefore, the theories, categories, etc., that they develop is based on the social historical experience, and that social historical experience is the experience of 12% of humanity, and therefore do not apply to the rest of the world in the same way. So we cannot import concepts from the West in the social science of humanity just like that. We need to be very careful in what we do, and we need to bring epistemic diversity to decolonize the university. We need to bring thinkers from other parts of the global South that has been thinking about the problems of the global South and are more relevant to our problems and countries who are doing a revolutionary anti-imperialist transformation, rather than importing European, American thinkers, even from the left, that have thought the problems of their own country, but haven't thought the problems of the global South, of Asia, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, and other areas of the world. So coming back to this question about how to decolonize the university, I think we need to, in a sense, the disciplines we have in the social science, humanities, for example, are disciplines that have been, in a sense, constructed during the 19th century as part of needs of European imperialist countries. They needed knowledge of, for example, anthropology to study the people they colonized and their cultures, to dominate them better. They needed knowledge about economics because they needed to have a policy about economic policy that was compatible with imperialist capitalist system. They needed political science to develop the policies of the state, and they needed geography for the global military geopolitics. So they split knowledge in compartments, in fragmented ways, because that was the way the imperialist states in Europe needed the knowledge to be produced. However, from the global South, with an anti-imperialist perspective, we don't need those fragmentations. We need to focus on more holistic concepts of knowledge production and put the dots together instead of fragmenting knowledge in this way. We need to bring there, in a sense, a transdisciplinary knowledge, a knowledge that is produced beyond the disciplines based on the problems of humanity rather than the problems of disciplines. When you produce knowledge based on the problems of disciplines, you fall into epistemic decadence or disciplinary decadence, because you're just discussing or producing knowledge based on disciplinary problems and not on the problems of humanity. The problems of humanity are very clear. We know there is an ecological crisis in the planet. We know there is a financial crisis with the capitalist system we're living. We know the problem of imperialism and unilateralism. We know the problems of, for example, domination of women in the world today. In many places, I mean, as a world scale, this is a part of modern civilization is to spread domination of women and exploitation of women in many parts of the world. So this is the patriarchy of Christendom that was globalized in the colonial project, and this is everywhere. So, and then we know also that there are problems about the concept of nation state. Also, this is a structure that is inherited from the modern capitalist Eurocentric project, and we need more, in a sense, a plurinational concept of state rather than nation state. And so we need to decolonize many things that we have inherited from the modern project in order to have a real, truly profound transformation of our countries, to produce and to be at the foundation of a new civilization that will be peaceful, that will be producing knowledge for the sake of humanity, and not knowledge to destroy humanity. Modern science have no ethics. Modern science is a science without ethics, and partly because of this split that I mentioned already between science and spirituality. They delink science from spirituality, and therefore they have a science with no limits. It's a science without spirituality is a science with no limits. It's a science where everything goes. It's a science that having no ethics lead you to making science idolatric, in a sense that science replacing Christendom, and now is the new truth, is the new God. You turn it into a fetishistic kind of, and then we are subordinated to whatever science says, and this should not be the case. We should have an ethics to decide and put limits to what will be useful, what is not useful, based on a profound ethics, because if not, we're going to be destroying ourselves. Look, if we put all our energy in producing nuclear weapons or in producing things that destroy life in planet Earth, we're just going to be an instrument of domination. Therefore, the universities have to be at the center of decolonizing knowledge, and decolonization knowledge has to be a fundamental project, especially if you're doing a revolution. And that decolonization entails to transform the disciplines to and bring epistemic diversity to every problem we look at. If we look at the ecological problem, let's see how other people, other critical thinkers of the global south as well as the north, are looking at the problem. I'm not an anti-European fundamentalist. I think that Europeans can enter the conversation, but not anymore as the center of the conversation. They have to enter as one more. And we need to bring epistemic diversity to everything we're studying. Anyway, these are my very brief thoughts. I have more to say. There are more videos of mine online, and you're welcome to check them out. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for the invitation.